everybody, welcome back to another Beans, Bags and Handicrafts Company's tutorial. Today I have done the tutorial for this bag here. This is the new Shamballa Victoria handbag. This is the one that's in the alpha pack. It's just released today, which is Saturday, February 20th. Yeah, so if you haven't gotten the pack yet, make sure you hop on over to our website and purchase it. This bag is just, I just love it. I said it kind of reminds me, if you take two Shamballa bags, the Pandora bag and the Solange bag, and if they were to have a baby, it would look like this. That's how I feel about this bag. I just love it. So in this tutorial, it does have piping. I featured the new Tula Pinks Lineworks line. I got this, the white you can't really see, but there is a bird in there. But I just love this Tula Pink line. I bought my fabric at Catch's Quilt Shop here in Kamloops. She carries the Tula Pink, which makes me very, very happy. My hardware is from Emmeline Bags. These connectors, these are the only metal connectors that I could find. I wish I could find a screw-in connector. I think that would be easier for doing this bag. My zipper is from Emmeline Bags, but my zipper pulls are from Blue Calla. Interfacing for this bag, for the cotton pieces, I used Fashion Fuse, which I get from cleanersupply.ca. It's an equivalent, it's kind of somewhere in between an SF101 and a woven fuse, but it's very cost effective here in Canada. It's a decent price. But yes, you any medium woven interfacing for the cotton pieces. I use Bayani Soft and Stable foam for my exterior pieces for the stabilizer, and on the bottom I also included some Decovil Heavy just to give a little more stability to the bottom of the bag. But yes, this is a really fun sew. It has, let me show you some of the features of this bag. So again, it has the strap connectors here, piping, a wonderful decorative panel. The shape on the sides is really cool, and it kind of goes all the way around. Again, it has a recessed zipper and an interior zipper pocket. This is not how it's done in the pattern. This you can find in my Bag Makers 101 playlist on how I do my interior zipper pockets with the overlay. It's my new favorite way of doing them, so I keep doing them. Anyways, I hope you all enjoy this tutorial. Again, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And without further ado, let's get to it. Enjoy, everybody. I can't wait to see your makes for this. Make sure you share them on my Facebook page. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the tutorial. Bye. All right, so let's get started with the pieces that we are going to need for the exterior of the bag. So for the exterior of the bag, for the hardware, you're going to need rivets. You are going to need 4 connectors of some sort. I'm using these connectors, which I get at Emmeline Bags. And 4 strap ends. So it's very minimal hardware on this bag for the exterior. Oh, you'll also need your nameplate or your handmade tag if you're putting that on. All right, so for the interior or exterior of the bag, you're going to need 1 bottom piece. This isn't called for in the pattern, but I did fuse a piece of Decovil Heavy onto the bottom. That's because I am thinking about adding purse feet to the bottom. I want it to be a little more stable there, but purse feet are not part of the pattern. I'm just adding them myself. If you're doing the optional piping, you can use store-bought piping, or you can make your own. So you'll need, if you're making your own, you're going to need 2 pieces of your piping material and your piping. Two straps, two exterior gusset, a back bean panel, and then your 3 pieces that are going to form your front bean panel. Which will be going together like that. That is it. Very minimal pieces for the exterior of this bag. So I'm actually going to go off camera. I'm going to make my straps, I'm going to make my piping, and I'm going to install my purse feet onto the bottom of the bag. I'm not going through how I do those. It's the same as all the other videos that I do them in. If you need to see how to make piping or install purse feet, or how to make the handles, I do have instructional videos for that in my Bag Makers 101 playlist. I will try to remember to link those videos into the description below. So go ahead, get those pieces ready to go, and then we're going to start putting together the front of this bag. Okay, so I've gone ahead with my straps and I installed my strap ends on them already, and I have my piping all done. I can just put that aside for now. I did end up not putting the purse feet on the bottom because I do not have any nickel purse feet. So that's made the decision for me. Okay, so what we want to do now is we want to pull out our exterior pieces. And we are going to put our A and B panels together. So this is the way the bag's going to be going together for me. Hopefully these colors look good together. I think it's going to be super cute. So we want to take our A and B pieces and we want to put them right sides together and match up that long edge. Whoops. Okay, and then we're going to go and sew across the top here with 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to press the seam open. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll be back. Okay, so I went ahead and I sewed those together. I pressed open my seams, and then the next step was to go and top stitch, and I don't know how well you can see the black one, but I top stitched on either side of the seam 1/8 inch seam allowance. So there's a top stitch right here, which you can see on the white, and then there's another top stitch on the bottom, and that will hold that seam open for you as well. So the next step is to take your front panel C, I believe it's called. It's going to be going like that. We're going to put them right sides together, and we're going to match up those ends. And we will have a little teeny tiny piece peeking up at the top here. That's okay. Once all the sewing is done, they will all line up perfectly fine. All right, so I'm going to go sew along here with 1/4 inch seam allowance, open it up, press my seams open, and then I'm going to top stitch along each side of that seam. Okay, so there's those panels all together, and you can see my top stitching down each side of that line with my seams open. So now what we want to do is I do it a little bit different than the pattern. I never pre-cut my foam. I like to actually do it all in one step, and I thought I'd show you how I do it with this one. So in the pattern it says to cut out the exterior panel, like the exterior back panel for your foam pieces. I do this and I just find it just saves a step because I can cut and use my pieces as the template. So I have my Biani Soft and Stable foam here. I mean, you could buy, all means, you could use some Decovil Light or some fleece. In the pattern, it says to keep the foam out of the seam allowance. I am on an industrial machine, so I don't really need to do that. And because I'm using sew-on foam, I like to baste it to that. So my Juki 2010Q could handle this no problem. Yeah, so I think with foam, it's okay to keep it in the seam allowance as long as you have a machine that's strong enough to handle it. If you're using anything fusible, I would definitely keep it 3/8 of an inch outside of the seam allowance. So what I'm going to do here is I just pick one side and I cut up it with my rotary cutter, and then I clip the foam to my main piece like so. And then follow my shape all the way around like this. My blade is dull. I really need to change that. And then I clip it. And then I find if for some reason your seam allowances are off, or if it shrunk a little bit when you were fusing the woven interfacing on, the foam ends up being the exact same size as the piece. Okay. You kind of want to make sure it's nice and flat and pulled nice and taut. All right, and then what I would do is just take this to my machine and baste around the edge with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, if you do have a machine that has a zigzag stitch, you could baste it with a zigzag stitch, and that will actually compress the foam on the back and make it a little bit easier in your seam allowance so it's not as thick. So that's a possibility to reduce some of the bulk as well. So you're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the exterior back piece, the exterior bottom piece, and the exterior gusset pieces. Attach them all to the foam. And all right, so I have all my exterior pieces attached to foam. Now we are going to do the optional piping. So on the pattern piece, it shows about 3 inches down from the top where the piping is to start and stop. Now this is completely subjective depending on what your connector is. Now when I look at the picture, I think her connector is taller than my connector. So I want my ring, it looks like, I want to say that's probably 3/4 of an inch from the top or so. You're just going to have to kind of eyeball it to see. So if I were to put my connector, and it's going to go over the side of the gusset and there, and the pattern piece here, if that makes any sense. So this is where she says to start and start the piping, and then we would be putting this in just a little bit above it. And I think that is going to be a little bit too low for my strap. So you want to take into account that you're going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the top. And I think if I just move it up 1/2 inch, that's going to work. So rather than starting and stopping my piping at 3 inches, I'm going to do mine at 2.5 and hope that that works. So I am going to measure down 2.5. I'm going to take my Choco pen and just mark it. So if that's where my piping is going to start, and I have this just slightly above, I think that that is going to work out good. So this will say be about 1/4 of an inch, and I think it's going to match about the placement on there. So for this part, you have to kind of eyeball it depending. If you're using these ones like what I'm using, again, I'm going to start at 2.5 inches down to start and stop my piping, and fingers crossed that it works. So, okay, I need a darker pen for here. Just putting it in my seam allowance so I can see where to start and stop my piping. Okay, so I have my marks. at the top where I want to start and stop my piping. So you're just going to put the piping maybe an inch above that mark and clip it all the way around. Okay, and then when you reach the other curved section, do your little snips. Okay, and then you're going to take this all the way up to that mark there. I'm actually just going to trim at that mark, my piping here. Okay, and then the final thing we want to do is we want this piping to veer off the edge here. So right at that mark, I don't know if you can see the little green mark I made there, you're just going to push your piping over to the side like that. And clip it in place. So you can see how it's going to kind of veer off, and you want to do the same with this other side. Just veer it off right at that line. And whoops, clip it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clip my other piping to my exterior piece. Again, starting and stopping 2.5 inches down for the triangle connectors I'm using from Emmeline bags. Fingers crossed my measurements work. And then I'll take this over to the machine, install my zipper foot, and I will show you how I'm going to sew this on at that point. All right, so I went ahead and I put the piping onto my back panel, and I will show you how I sewed it on with my front panel. I apologize for the lighting in here. I still am trying to fix my lighting situation. It's very dark in here during the day. I am in my basement, so summertime it's pretty good, but wintertime it kind of is bad. That's why I do most of my sewing in the other room there, or teaching in the other room. Okay, so I have installed my zipper foot. I do find this helps get really close to the stitching and is a good method to go. It's easy to do with a zipper foot, I find. Okay, so we want to stitch this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So you want to start just slightly above where the piping begins. The 1/4 inch, whoops. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew, it's going to be before the piping, and then you're going to still follow the side of the bag here. So it's going to go over top of the piping and then start meeting with your piping thread this way. See if I can get closer so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing here. I don't know if this will help. We'll find out. Okay. So I have my piping pulled over to the side here. We're not on the piping yet. Now we're going to go over top of the piping, almost on, looks like it's on a diagonal, and then it's eventually going to meet up with the stitching we made along when we created our piping. So then just put your zipper foot right nice and close up to the piping to get a nice, it'll go right over those other stitches that you made. And it's just, mine is just slightly under a 1/4 inch, but that's okay. And I'm just using a basting stitch to do this for now because we will have a actual sewn stitch when we attach the gussets. So I think I'm going to run out of bobbins soon. I might get lucky. Okay, so then when we come up to the other side, we still want to kind of follow along where the edge of the bag is here. You don't want to follow along the side of the piping because we have that veered off. So you kind of have to imagine from here to here where that line is and follow it up, sticking with that 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And it will go over top of the piping. Then when you're off the piping, I just do a little back stitch at that 1/4 inch part. So I'll show you. So you can see how it veered off here and still went up on, I can't see it so much on this side, but on both sides. So yes, okay, so now I'm actually going to go and I'm going to attach my nameplate and then we'll come back and we will put it on the gusset. Okay, so now we have to assemble our gusset. So what we want to do, I like to call it a fishtail. I think it looks like a fishtail. You want to take your bottom piece and one of your gussets, put them right sides together, clip them together. Now this seam allowance is just a little bit bigger. We're going to do this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. My green tape here is actually my 3/8 seam allowance. I just put a little bit of painter's tape on there to mark my seam because I don't have any marks on my machine. Make sure your back stitch. And I have left my zipper foot on mainly because we're going to be doing the gussets to the piping soon. So if it looks a little weird, that is why. I just don't want to. It's a little bit of a process to change it out on an industrial machine. Oh, and I didn't check my bobbin thread, so hopefully we have enough here. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to push it this way with your, actually I don't know if they want us to open it up or not. Maybe look. One sec, let me double check. Add the... Okay, that's right. So we want to make sure that the seam allowance is pointing towards the bottom. So towards this piece here. And then we're going to top stitch that with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to keep it in place. So we're top stitching through the bottom piece. And I am running out of bobbin right there, but I'm good. So it's just like that, and then it has that in place there. So go ahead and do the same with the other side, attaching the other gusset piece to the bottom. I'm going to go and change my bobbin and do that, and then we'll come back. All right, now it's time to attach our gusset to our main panel. So what we want to do first is we want to find the centers. So we're going to match up these seam allowances here, like so. Press it together like this, and that is going to give us the centers of the bottom. And then you can mark it with a pen. I just like to make little snips within the seam allowance. Snips don't rub away. It's just easier for me. Okay, and then we're going to take one of our main panel pieces, put it right sides together, and actually we want to find the center of these pieces as well. So fold them in half and just do a little snip. Okay. So right sides together. Match up that center clip mark like so. I like to just kind of secure the bottom in place just before the curb. Okay, then you're going to take the other side and we want to align our tops. So we'll work one side to one side. So there, and then align the top on this side as well. So it's kind of similar if you've ever done the Pandora bag, the Shamballa Patterns Pandora bag. It kind of has the same shape as that. Okay, and then you're just going to line up the edge of the bag. Now, your piping is going to stick out. We do want that. You don't want to trim it up just yet. We will trim it up after we finish the stitching. Just make sure that the top of the gusset and this are what are in line. So this is going to pop out like that, if that makes any sense at all. Okay. Okay, so if it's not fitting properly here, you could do little snips into the gusset, but my gusset actually seems to want to go into place quite easily, which is really good. But if it isn't and it's a little tight, definitely go and put little snips on the gusset piece around the corner. Okay, that's one side done. Actually, it's going around that corner nicely there too. That is nice. No snips required for me today. All right, now how do I want to do this? Just thinking, okay, usually I would say, you probably can. I'm going to attempt to do this. What it is you're going to have to feel for where your piping is. If we sew from this side, you can follow the lines of the stitching of the piping we did before, but I do find it's easier to sew it down this way with the main panel to the bed of the machine. So I'm going to do this and just feel along where the piping is and have my zipper foot right next to that to sew it all together. So this is going together. I'm just going to double check my seam allowances. The gusset. Yeah, with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So hopefully, I'm trying to make it so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay. And again, I still have my zipper foot on. If you have a piping foot, I've never used a piping foot before, but I'm sure that would be absolutely amazing to use as well. But my zipper foot is exactly a 1/4 inch, which makes me happy. And it just makes it easy to follow the piping with it. Okay, so this is where we're coming over the bump with the piping is kind of sticking out the side. So I want to follow the bag down. Okay. And I can feel my piping is right next to my zipper foot, and I'm just going to make sure that it stays there and stitch it all the way around at a 1/4 inch. Take it nice and slow. You don't want to run over that piping and get it tucked into the seam, so you want to make sure you're beside the piping. If you have to just make sure your needle's down. Sometimes it helps to put a hand inside the bag if you can on the corners. Try and get nice and close to that piping without going over the piping. Oops, I didn't snip that in properly. There we go. And if you kind of need a practice round, practice with the back. I'm using the front panel right off the hop, but you can always do it with the back panel, which isn't as visible, to get a good feel for it before doing the front panel. Okay. Let me went off there a little bit. I might have to. And if you go off a little bit, you get to go back later and just fix it. And I'll show you how to do that because I think I'm going to have to for part of it there. Piping still beside, so that's good. Just hand cranking over that seam there. My walking foot is not liking going over it with the zipper foot on, so I just give it a little bit of a hand. Okay. So honestly, I think this is the hardest part of the bag, is probably putting on the piping. And it's completely optional. You don't have to do the piping. My piping is a little thicker because I did do it out of vinyl, so it just makes for a little bit of a thicker seam. Okay, so we're coming to the point where we're going to go up and over the piping because we're sticking out here. So just follow the line of your gusset there for your 1/4 inch seam allowance. Go on over top of it. It'll be really thick, but that's okay. And back stitch. Okay, so this is where you will want to, oops, I got a thread sticking out of here. I can already see I have to go over it. So if you kind of pop it out, check to see how happy you are with your piping. I'm happy that I haven't run over the piping at all, but I'm thinking what I think is right. Yes, see how on this side I can see my piping stitching? That means I kind of went off course a bit. So I'm just going to go back, switch it back over and do that stitch a little bit deeper. I felt my machine slip at that point, but we don't want those showing. So we'll just have to go and do the seam. I think everywhere else, oh, there's a little bit of one right there. So I'm going to go and this side isn't bad. Okay, so for that part there, I'm just going to pop it back over, kind of take account where that was. And I think what I'm going to do, so you can see here on this side here, how it kind of veered up and didn't follow those lines. So I'm actually going to put it this way so I can follow those lines a little better now that it is fully attached. And over those parts where that stitching is showing, I'm just going to go and make a bigger seam allowance. And where it slipped was right where that bottom seam is where we attached it to the gusset. That's where I slipped off. Okay, let's see if that did it. So if I flip it back around in that spot, you can see that it's now no longer visible. So that's good. So I'm going to go and fix that other one spot, and then I'm going to attach my other side. So what it is you're going to have it like this, and you're going to attach it like this, match your centers, and so all the way around that way, and then we can turn it right side out. So go ahead and do that. And all right, so our piping is done, and you can see how that fishtail gusset gives the bag a really kind of a cool shape. And there's the piping on the back. The shiny part's just oil from my machine. So the next step now is to take your connectors, your metal connectors, and you're going to install them, kind of eyeball where you want to install them, which I think is going to be about, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so, about that much above where the piping ends. So it's going to go over, it's going to be centered over the gusset seam and the front seam like that, because this is how the bag is going to sit, like so. And this is how the connector's going to go on like that. So if you don't have metal connectors, you could always do a hidden connector here. You could make your own connectors, vinyl connectors or whatever, to put here and install like you do on other bags. So I'm going to go ahead off camera and install these. Install your metal connectors, whatever the manufacturer's instructions are, and then we will come back. All right, so there we have it. The exterior is finished. I put on my metal connectors here. These were tough to put on, I found, but these are prong ones. I think if I could find screw-in connectors, it would be a lot easier for me, but I did end up on the other side of the prongs putting some Decovil Heavy and then just covering them with duct tape just so they don't poke through the lining. But this is what the exterior looks like. So now we can move on to the lining. So what you'll need for the lining hardware wise is you're going to need 2 zippers, one for your pocket and one for the zipper panel. 2 zipper pulls. I'm using number 5 zipper tape, and then a metal zipper end, or you can make your own zipper end if you wanted to. 4 pieces. All my lining pieces, because they're cotton, I have backed with the woven interfacing. I use Woven Fuse from cleanersupply.ca. Just like I've said in other videos, you can use SF101, you can use Woven Fuse, you can use Woven Fuse 2. Again, I'm using Fashion Fuse from Cleaner Supply. So you're going to need 1 bottom piece, 2 gusset pieces, 1 pocket piece, or you can use 2 pocket pieces. We will be cutting this in half like this. 2 lining pieces, and then you're going to want your exterior zipper panel piece and 2 lining zipper panel pieces. Your lining contrast band, and you can do this in either your outside fabric like I'm doing, or you can do it in the lining fabric. If you're using vinyl, or not using vinyl and using cotton, make sure you do back them with woven interfacing. And I am doing my zipper panel different from, not zipper panel, my pocket panel different than the pattern. I am using the overlay method. I'm not going to show you how I do this in this tutorial. I do have a tutorial on this in my Bag Makers 101 playlist if you want to go check that out. And that's that install, I think, is called Interior Pocket with Overlay. I'll try to remember to put that down in the description. So the first thing we are going to do is attach our gusset pieces to our bottom piece, and we're doing this exactly the way it was done for the exterior. So you're going to take one of your gusset pieces and your lining bottom, Put them right sides together, lining up that short edge. You're going to sew this with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, open it up and pushing the seam allowance towards the bottom of the bag. You're going to top stitch this with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that with both pieces. You'll repeat it with the other one. Do it the same, exactly the same as we did with the exterior. I'm also going to install my interior lining zipper pocket off camera, and then we'll come back and we will work on the zipper panels. All right, so we have our gusset assembled. I have my zipper pocket on. Now this is a little bit different of an assembly. I think I understand why we're doing it this way. We will see how it goes. This is my first time making this, so it should be interesting. Okay, so we now want to attach our gusset to our main panels. So we have not attached our exterior, our lining piece, or our lining contrast bands yet. That is going to come later. This is the part that's different because usually we do that all together, but we will see how it goes. Okay, so we want to find the center of our gusset. So again, match up those seams and do small clips on the center parts there. Like so. And then we want to take our pattern piece, and there are little marks on it, and we want to transfer those marks to our pattern piece. So I'm actually going to do it on the opposite side. Make a little snip so I can see where it is. So we got one right in the center point and then one slightly in. And I'm going to grab my pen. Okay, transfer those marks. So, and we want to do that on the other lining panel as well. Okay. And then we're going to take our gusset piece, right sides together, just like we did. Actually, I'm going to fold this in half and find my center on the bottom, so I can match it with my center on this. So just like how we assembled the exterior, attaching the gusset. Oops. So from the side without the pocket, I am actually going to leave an opening in the lining for turning. I also left the bottom of my pocket open, and that's so we can seal up the bottom later on. So if it doesn't look like it's going to fit in the gusset, just put a few little small snips to help it around the curve. And I'm going to make some little marks here for myself. I like to put like X's or something because I am going to leave the bottom of my bag open from about there to there for turning. A little bit of a snip just to get around that corner. Okay, so then we're going to work around, except for this time I'm just going to double check my seam allowance. Okay, so for the lining, it is a little bit different. We're starting with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance here, and then as we work our way down, we're going to go to a 1/2 inch. We're going to back stitch here, jump over to here, so we leave this bottom open, 1/2 inch all the way up, and then work our way up to 3/8 of an inch. And then you're going to come back and you're going to attach the other side like this. Same thing, except for we're not leaving an opening in the bottom. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll be back to start with the zipper panel. Okay, so there's our lining pieces together. We have an opening in the bottom for turning. We have an opening in our pocket to seal up that bottom later, which I'll show you. We start at a 3/8 seam allowance. It gets bigger all the way around. We can put that aside for now. Now you want to pull out your lining contrast band. Ignore my drawings here. I always sketch out my pieces and it didn't quite fit there, so I ended up going over top. So we have all these little markings, 1, 2, and then the center. And we want to transfer those marks to this piece. 1, 2, 3, and on the other side as well. Again, if you make little snips when you flip it over, you'll be able to see where those marks need to go. You know what? My piece looks like it's a little bit long on one side. 1, 2, 3. Mark up here as well. It is, I cut it funny, so I'm just going to trim that up. Okay. And then do the same on the other side. And this one's good. So you can see the marks we have along there from the pattern piece. Then you want to take them and you want to put the two right sides together, and along the short side we are going to stitch this with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. So go ahead, take that to your machine, 1/4 inch seam allowance down both of these sides. All right, so we have our two ends attached, and now what we want to do is I'm just going to use some double-sided tape. We want to open up these seams so they stay open. So I'm going to take some double-sided tape on each side of that seam. So. Come on, tape. Okay. And then take that seam and flatten it out. That, and I just have the seam roller. It's a Violet Craft seam roller. Oops. And I like to just give a little more pressure to flatten it out, to make it stick really good. And then go ahead and do that with the other side as well. In my double-sided tape, I actually get my 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape from Emmeline Bags. They have a really, it's this one. It's nice and skinny. It's perfect for putting zippers on. And the rest is I just find it on Amazon. I get this bulk pack that comes with 3 different sizes. So, all right. So that's what we have. So we have like this loop, and our seams are opened up on that. I'm going to show you how I install my zipper pull onto my zipper by the yard with a fork. My husband made me, it's just a clamp, and he stuck a fork in it and bent the fork a little bit, and this just works wonders. So it's a 4-pronged fork. I put my zipper pull in like that, if you can see. Oops. Then I take the ends of my zipper tape with the right side down and put them in each side and just pull through. And that one went on pretty even. If it doesn't go in even, you just take it off and do it all again. But that's how you install the zipper pull. Okay, so now you're going to take your zipper. So we're onto the zipper panel. So what you want to do is on these open ends is you want to bend, see if I can show what I'm doing here. Bend this down almost to form a loop like that. And then see that little loop right there? And then you want to fold that part up against the zipper tape. So you end up with a 90-degree angle there. And you're going to take that to the machine and stitch it with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Match up the other side. Again, doing the same thing. You kind of bend it to form a loop and fold it upon itself. Like that. So it's nice and even. And then you just take that to the machine and with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, secure that into place. Now we are going to do the zipper panel. So we want to take one of our exterior pieces and mark in on both sides 3/4 of an inch. There's also marking on the pattern piece if you want to use that, but I think it's just as easy to measure it. And I'm going to take some double-sided tape and I'm going to fold in at that line. Like so. Oops. You know what? Put it on the ends, not along the line. Wait, let me just double check. Oh, my mistake. That's okay. We're gonna fold to the line. So we're gonna take this edge and fold right to that line like that. And do the same on the other side. So, and fold in. Oops, I got a piece of interfacing stuck in there. Fold that short edge into that line like so. So now we got one piece that has both sides in. Now for your other 3 pieces, mark in 3/4 of an inch on one side of each. Let's do this one first. Like so. Do the same thing just on the one side. And fold into that line. Now the reason we're only doing the one side is we want to ensure that these are the exact same size. So this is the one that has the 2 sides in. We're going to line up the one side that we folded on each, make sure they're even. I'm going to put a little bit of tape on the edge of this side, like so. I'm actually going to put them on top of each other because I want them to be the exact same size. And then match up your folds. Oops. Like so. And then make sure, see we have two pieces that are the exact same length that way. So just double check that they're exactly the same, which they are, and then do the same with the lining pieces. So I'm going to use a non-marking pen. Fold one end into the line, like so. Lay it up against this piece here. And fold it so it's the exact same. There we go, those two are done. They're the same length, they are. And one more, do one side. Fold it in, lay it up for reference. Come on. And so it's the same. So you should have all four pieces that are the exact same length. Okay, now to put the zipper on. So you're going to take one of your zipper panel lining pieces. You are going to mark 3/8 of an inch in. Is it 3/8? Let's double check. Yeah, and that's going to be our mark for where we are going to put our zipper. So we're going to put the lining panels right side up. Our zipper is right side up. See if I can come in closer. And we are going to put the zipper right at that mark we made right there. Actually, I'm going to use tape. Take some double-sided tape and lay it all along the top, like so. You can use clips. I was going to use clips, but this just makes it easier for me. So I like double-sided tape. Okay. So take the zipper right side up, line up where that mark is we just made it, that 3/8 mark, and line up our raw edges all the way down, like so. Then I'm going to take an exterior piece. So you can actually take this to your machine and baste it right now if you want to. This is one of the reasons why I use the tape. It holds it together really good. So I'm going to skip a step doing it this way. So I'm going to take more tape and put it along one edge of, oops, oh man, I am having tape problems today. Like so. Take the tape off, and then we are going to put this piece right sides together with the zipper and match up. I'm actually going to undo my zipper now, and we're going to match up. I want it to match up to the lining piece so they're even, like so, and then all along that raw edge. This is really sticky tape. You can probably hear it sticking to my fingers. And it should match up to the other folded edge perfect, which it does. So you can see how our edges match perfectly there, and they match perfectly there, which is what I want. Just gonna double check my seam allowance for this. Okay, and then we're going to go along the top here. Use a zipper foot if you want, and sew that with 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, so that's all sewn. Now what we want to do is we want to finger press this because it's vinyl. I can't take it to the iron. We want to put the lining panel and the exterior right sides together, or wrong sides together, sorry. And I'm going to take some clips to hold that in place. On both sides, pulling it nice and tight. Line up the bottoms here, matching them up. Okay, and then I'm going to take this to the machine. So we have our folded sides all matched up. I'm actually going to start at the bottom here. I want to baste the bottom 2 pieces together with 1/8 inch seam allowance. And then we're going to top stitch up the sides across the zipper tape and down, and then finish off at the bottom. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come. Okay, so that's all done. You can see we're top stitched, and then I just basted the raw edges together. It doesn't call to do that in the pattern. I just like to make sure that they're going to stay in place. This raw edge will be in a seam. So we want to attach the other side. So you want to do up your zipper like this. Take your lining piece and your double-sided tape again. First, make sure you have, if it's directional, you have them going the way you want. So if it's like, where do I want it to be? Okay. I think that's right. Yep. Okay. I swear, this double-sided tape in me today. Not coordinated at all. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to do any marks. I am just going to make sure I'm lining this edge and this edge up so they are even. Like so. And then pressing it down. other side should match up. And it does. Perfect. So you can see how my edges are lined up nicely. Okay, and then you're going to take your exterior piece. Same thing. Again, you can use clips to hold this together. I just love double-sided tape. Okay, oops. So match up, make sure that they're even here. Right sides together with the zipper tape. All the way across. Stick to the tape. And making sure that these folded edges are the same and match up, which they do. Perfect. So again, we have completely matched sides there. I'm going to undo my zipper tape, so it's just easier to sew. Make sure that you put little tack stitches there because you don't want to accidentally zip that right off. So we're going to do the exact same thing, 1/4 inch seam allowance, open it up, top stitch, and baste that bottom edge. Hey guys, we're so close. We're so close to getting this done. So this is the part that's a little bit different than other ways I have installed a zipper panel into a bag. So this will be a first for me as well, as we're going to be doing it in a loop, I guess. So there's my zipper panel all done. What you want to do now is fold it in half and find the centers along that raw edge. So match up your panels like that, do a small snip. Same with on the other side. Like so. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to unzip this. Because now we are going to take just mark the centers. Let me just double check this. Okay. So we want to have our lining panel right side out. And you're also going to want to think about which part is going to be the front of the bag and which is going to be the back of the bag for the way it will open. Okay. So my zipper panel, I like my bag to have the pocket in the back. Okay. So it will open like so, I think. Is this right? And this is a new technique for me to do it this way. Right sides together. Okay, no, so I want it this way. Okay. So we're going to put it right sides together. Okay, so this is a little bit different way of installing a zipper panel than I'm used to, so bear with me as we learn this together. So what you want to do is you want to mark the centers. I've already done that of the zipper panel. All you do is fold it in half and make small snips where that is. Now you want your zipper or your lining to be right side out like this, and you want your zipper panel to be right side up. So I like my pocket to be at the back of the bag, so you got to think about which way the zipper's opening. So I have the side that isn't my zipper, or isn't my zipper pocket face up right now, and my zipper pull going to the left. So we have our lining right side up, and we have our zipper panel right side up. And we want to take and match. We have marks here where we have marked our center on the lining panel and our notch here, and we want to clip those together. So match your centers. And clip it. Try to open up that seam if you can, all the way across. And then down the other side. My lining fabric likes to fray. I've got all these little fray marks here. Like so. Okay. Now, this is the tricky part, and this is similar to how, like on the Pandora, or the Antonella, how we flipped the zipper over. So you're going to want to undo it, because now we need to get that to the other side of the bag. So what you're going to do is, so we've just unzipped it. You're going to take this panel, flip it like that, flip it again, like that. So I'll show you that again. So we have the zipper straight here. You're going to take it, you're going to flip it like this, flip it again, and then match it to the center of the other side. I hope that made sense. And then do it all the way across. Is because we're working in that loop and we don't want that zipper to get twisted, and that's just the trick that I find to do it with the flip in the flip. It's what works for me. But with the other Shamballa patterns, we're usually doing that on the exterior to have a zipper across the top, but it's the same idea as those other bags. Okay, so now I am going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to baste these on each side with the 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I did both sides at the same time. You can definitely do one side, baste it, and come back and then do the flip and flip, but I'm just doing it all at once. So you're just going to go and take these to the machine and baste them on. Okay, so that is done. Now I just want to double check that I did my zipper properly, so I'm going to put this lining inside out just like it was in the bag. And then zip it shut to make sure. So I can already tell I did my zipper placement wrong, but I'm going to just leave it. And it's not that it's super wrong. I just usually like my zipper pocket to be at the back of the bag, but my thinking was obviously wrong. So now with my zipper pull being this way, it's going to be at the front of the bag. But that's okay. I'm not going to take it apart, and my zipper is straight. So yeah, so how I explained it before, it was wrong. Do it the opposite way if you like your zipper pocket to be at the back. But I said it's still functional, it still works. Some people prefer it at the front. This is just how this one is going to be. Okay, so flip it back, right side out. Keep your zipper down and out of the way. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our contrast band, make sure those are pressed nice and open, because mine popped open. And we're going to take those marks and we are going to match them to this. So we want to place our contrast band right sides together. Again, this is a really different way even for me to be doing this, but if we're learning something new today. Okay. So with the marks that we had made on our lining panel here, we want to match them with the marks on our contrast band. So there's our center mark there. So I'm going to clip that right away. And then here's another mark here and another mark there. Match them up, and they do. Same with on this side. Match them up. And then on the other side. So we're working in a loop here, making sure your zipper panel's down and your zipper's out of the way. We're going to match up the center marks here again. I bring you in a little closer to see. So there's my center mark, and there's the center mark we marked on our contrast band. Then we got this mark here, and oh, it's starting to fade, but I can see it right there. Make sure they match up, and they do. Thank goodness. And same with this other side. Make sure that they match, and they do. Okay. And those marks are because we don't have a center line to match this up with. So now we're going to just go around and pin it evenly. Now you'll see that there's a little bit of a triangle top here on the gusset. That should match up with the middle of that seam there. Make sure you've pressed that seam open still if it's not sticking. Go around to the other side. Oh, there was another mark here to match, and it's underneath my thing. That's okay. That kind of matches up with that point, which is good. Make sure your zipper is kind of not twisted and it's out of the way. You don't want to sew through that by accident. And it should fit good. Hopefully. So far, so good. And one more side here. Like so. Okay, so we're going to take this over to the machine, and we are going to sew around this with a 1/4 of an inch seam. All right, so I've brought you to the machine. I think it'll be beneficial to see how we're going to do this. So I like to sew from the inside of the bag. So go around with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, for some reason, my camera, my app crashed. So you didn't get to see me sew all the way around, but you just got to see the beginning of it. So yes, it's all the way around. We've done that. Now what we want to do is we want to pop this out like so. Double check that it caught that zipper panel good in there, which it did. Make sure our zipper didn't get caught in anything. Now what we want to do is very carefully, we want to top stitch right along the bottom of the zipper panel all the way around to catch that seam going down to the bottom of the bag. So I am going to do that now. So make sure you're pushing part of it out of the way, this part, so you're not catching it. So it's kind of like top stitching when we do the final top stitch of a bag. Okay, so that's all done. What I want to make sure is, once again, just to make sure that it zips up properly, and this is what we should have, and it does. Yay, we're almost done, almost done. Okay, so open that up again, stick your tail down inside, and now we are going to attach the exterior and the lining together. I don't know if I should take this to my other table or not, but I'm going to stay here. Okay, so you want to think about which way it opens. So again, I usually like to have my zipper at the back of the bag, but I didn't put it in correctly. So you're going to take the exterior bag and put it into the lining so they're right sides together. It's going to be a tight fit because the lining is smaller than the exterior. Like so. And you're going to start matching up the center marks of both panels. And clipping all the way around. Okay, so continue clipping all the way around, matching up your centers and your sides, where our side kind of comes down right here. See, it kind of comes down. That's the whale tail. That should line up with our mark here, and then matching our center marks from the top panel and here. So go ahead and clip that all the way around. We'll come back and we will sew that together. All right, so I have it all clipped around. Again, it's kind of a tight fit, but we got her done. So now what we want to do is we want to go around the top, and we're going to use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance this time. I like to do it again from the inside of the bag. Find a place to start. Make sure you take your corners nice and slow. Okay, so that's done. So you just want to make sure you look and make sure everything got caught all the way around. Got a nice 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now off camera, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinking shears around these curves just to trim down the seam allowance to about 1/4 of an inch so we have a nice turn. And then I am going to turn it through the bottom, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I clipped it. I have turned the bag. I am just now putting the lining back into the inside of the bag and kind of finger rolling these seams and placing clips on for top stitching. So you want to make sure everything was caught good. You want to make sure your corners are going good. Finger press all the way around. And I like to clip it in place just to make sure everything stays where it should. It's kind of hard to show in this room. I need a much better camera setup in here. That's why I prefer to do it at the table. But so if there's any, like here, the corner's stuck in, just reach in through the opening in the bottom. I apologize for Miss Coco. I think my husband is home. Kind of poke it out so you get a nice curve there. Roll the seam between your fingers and continue clipping. So I'm going to continue doing that all the way around, and then I'm going to top stitch around the top of the bag with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'll come back and show you how we seal up the bottom. Okay, that top stitching is done. I got a little nervous because I am using black thread on white, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if that doesn't look good, I'm going to cry. It looks pretty good. I mean, look at that zipper panel. Yeah, I am super happy with this. So now to finish off the bottom, again, if you followed the pattern, you would just pull out the lining and kind of fold in the edges and snip it together and clip it together. My way is, and it's why we left this opening in the pocket. So you want to pull out your pocket, reach in and grab the opening in the lining and pull it up through the pocket like this. And this just makes it so you don't have that ridge at the bottom of the bag from sewing up your lining. Clip that opening shut. Oops. Like so. And we did a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the lining bottom, so we are going to sew that from where we stopped stitching. Do a back stitch all the way across. Back stitch. Stuff that back in. Take a check, and you can see how it is absolutely seamless on the bottom. And then take that pocket, and because we had curled down the insides already, you have this wonderful curled over edge to top stitch. And this top stitch doesn't show because it's inside of a pocket. This is why this is my favorite way to do this. And then so shut that pocket. Pocket back through. It feels very weird that my pocket's in the front of the bag because that's not usually how I have it, but I think it's best to keep my mistakes in, to be honest. Then you can see what we're doing. So all we have to do now is put on the straps, which I will do off camera. I just rivet my straps on and install my zipper end. I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter and then install my zipper end there. And then I'll give it a quick steam because my fabric got a little bit wrinkly here. But that's it. That's the brand new Victoria bag by Shamballa Designs. This bag kind of reminds me of if the Solange and the Pandora bag had a baby. This is what it would look like. It's a super cute bag, and I just love the unique shape. I love that it has the zipper closure. Yeah, no, this is a fun little bag, and I mean, you could do these front panels in vinyls, you could do them in corks. I think it's a really good way to accent some really fun prints. So I'm going to go and I'm going to finish all of that up. I hope everybody enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. Thank you, Sammy, again for letting me do tutorials, especially on these bags for release. Again, this bag pattern is part of the Alpha Pack, so if you want it, you got to hop on over to the Shamballa Bags website and pick that up. And I believe it will go for release to the general public outside of that club. I don't know if it's like 3 or 6 months. I'm not sure. All the details are on her website there. So, but yeah, this is the Victoria bag. Again, if you found this video useful, make sure you like and leave me a comment. I would love to hear what you think. And make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Hit that little notification button so you always know when I'm putting another video on. And again, thanks everybody for tuning in. I will see you on the next one. Bye.